Hi, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Preventing Decline, where you might think we're going in a different direction. You might think we're going to talk about MMA and fighting and wrestling, but we are not. That is not the focus today. But we do have a very special guest with us. Sandhu, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Keith. I appreciate the invite. And yes, we're not going to be talking about mixed martial arts or the UFC or professional wrestling or combat sports, but we're going to be talking about something I've been dealing with, which is obviously very relevant to your line of work and your profession. And hopefully the people that watch and listen to this can take something away from it, whether it's going to impact them directly or someone in their life.
Look, I think you just put that perfectly, right? Because at the end of the day, as we get older, as we age, there are certain things we're going to experience, of which I have a promissory note for all of you out there listening. You will suffer with hearing loss. You will probably experience tinnitus. These are things that just happen as we get older. But you see, most people, the issue being that a lot of times it's like, oh, hearing loss, hearing aids, you must be older. And clearly that's not the situation. And we have the data to support it. And once I heard your story going in to seek treatment for your tinnitus, meeting with one of our approved providers, Dr. Sharina Samuel, shout out to her. I was so excited because I wanted to share this story with so many people. And look, you're an internet personality. A lot of people know who you are. I've heard a lot of people come to me and say, hey, did you hear Sandhu is talking about this? So thank you for being here. But I'd love to know your experience, your story, and how it all started.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think for me, it kind of goes back to a couple of years ago. So just to kind of give a point of reference, I just turned 40 at the back end of 2023, just so that people can get an idea of kind of my age range and bracket and, what I've been experiencing and going through. And for a few years now, I've just been experiencing tinnitus, and it didn't really last for any more than, say, 30 seconds or, here or there, but nothing that kind of raised any alarm bells for myself. I just thought it was something that everyone goes through. It's normal and it's not really impacting my day-to-day life. But then what I started to also notice is that the hearing in my left ear, for some reason, just wasn't quite good as my right ear. And funnily enough, the place that I started to experience that the most was lying down in bed. So I'm lying down on my pillow on my kind of left side, and sometimes I'm speaking to my wife or she's speaking to me, and I started to realize that I had to raise my head in order to use both ears to really understand what she was trying to say, because it sounded muffled. I couldn't quite clearly hear what she was saying. And then there were other scenarios, whether it be at a sporting event or whether it be at a bar or a restaurant. I'm amongst friends, and I'm constantly just leaning in a little bit more with my left ear to help with the understanding of what I'm actually hearing. And what ended up actually happening was around September, October of 2023, I woke up at around 4 o'clock in the morning and I had another episode of tinnitus. And prior to that, my episodes were no longer than, say, 30 seconds to a minute. This particular episode lasted for half an hour. And I'm sure a lot of people know, but if they're not, as I've come to learn, the tinnitus is different for everyone. It could be a ringing sound, it could be a tone. For me, it was just a tone. And so I'm kind of hearing this tone, and I kind of wake my wife up. I'm like, hey, do you hear that? She's like, hear what? And I'm like, okay, this is something that only I'm hearing and I'm experiencing. And that was the first moment that I realized, oh, this is serious, because I couldn't go back to sleep. It lasted for half an hour, like I said. And that's when I initially decided to make an appointment to see my GP, my family doctor. He then referred me to Sharina Samuel, which is a dedicated hearing clinic here in Toronto. And that's kind of when I went through the more rigorous testing and ultimately came to find out that, my situation is hereditary. It's a genetic issue. So it's like, it's not anything that I have personally done. I haven't taken any head trauma. I haven't been listening to, loud music or been in environments with something that's impacted my hearing. And, as I was kind of going through this process and learning how the ear is divided into three parts, you've got the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. When I was told that the outer ear and the middle ear was absolutely healthy, absolutely fine, and it was the sensory side of my ear, the inner ear that is kind of connected to sending all these signals and messages to my brain, that's what was causing the issue. And it's just part of my DNA. It's just, like I said, genetic and hereditary. And so hearing that as I'm, approaching 40, I feel healthy and fit for my age. I look after myself, have done so for the vast majority of my life. And this is the first time I've been, dealt this news, and everyone's different, everyone from an emotional, psychological point of view. When you kind of get hit with some unfortunate news as it relates to your health, everyone's going to take it differently, and everyone's got an ego, and I've certainly got an ego, right? And literally, I think for me, it was a case of, okay, I've just been told this news. I'm just sitting there with Sharina in her office, and then I think 30 seconds later, my mindset switched complete to, okay, how do we resolve this? How do we tackle it? What are the solutions available? And then that's kind of when I started my treatment process with her. But I think the other key thing that came out of the experience of going to an actual professional hearing clinic, not your family GP, was obviously the experience she was bringing to the table and the information she was giving me and I was downloading from our conversation. But then honestly, to support that and to back that up, it really was I don't know if you want to call it a book or a white paper or a research data document, but what you and Sharina collaborated on, it took me just a couple of hours to read, but it really was the data. And I'm a big fan of science and data. It's black and white. There's no shades of gray there. Supported by actual testing in the field, and to know that, if hearing loss, it doesn't matter how severe or minimal it is, can be treated as soon as possible at an early age. You're really helping prevent the risk of long-term, cognitive issues and dementia, slurred speech. And that's what really prompted me to take action immediately, and not because I could easily have been like, you know what, I'm 40. I'll just deal with this when I'm 50, or I'll deal with it when I'm 60. But I wanted to take action straight away because I do care about, other parts of my health as it relates to my brain, and I want to live the longest, healthiest life possible. And so when I started to kind of learn that there are other individuals out there that on average would wait 7-8 years after getting some of those early signals and signs that they are experiencing something that they should get checked out and treated, it kind of blew me away. And so I just thought, okay, well, professionally, I've been able to, and luckily enough, build up a social media following. Now is an opportunity, not just for myself to go through this journey on a personal level and share it with my immediate friends and family in the hopes of kind of helping them, but why not speak about this publicly, and then hopefully if even one person listens or reads or watches something related to this that I'm going through and takes action, and it leads to a positive impact on their life or someone in their life, job done. And I'm happy with that. And that's kind of how we got connected. Because I put out a video on my social media platforms, and apparently there were people in the MMA community that were reaching out to your office. So yeah, that's kind of like I think a Cliff's Note version of.
Well, look, I think whether you like it or not, you've officially become the spokesperson of our Excellence in Audiology community, which is where you can get connected to providers, where you can get education, books, white papers, videos, you name it. Our goal is to educate more people. I mean, that was truly an amazing story. And I think about, I might need you on stage at some of my science seminars, because you just explained hearing loss, you explained tinnitus, you explained it all so perfectly and so passionately. I think, there was a lot to break down there, but your story about the symptoms, the early, right? Because look, people think about hearing loss, and too often they think it is black and white. It's like a light switch. It's either on or it's off. And that's not the case at all. The symptoms you described, where you lose the clarity, the crispness, the clearness of what others are saying because they start to sound a little muffled. So if you're experiencing that, there's a problem. If you're at, restaurants or at an MMA fight or UFC or anywhere, even at a local restaurant, or you're just sitting around the table with you and the kids, and it's like, I'm struggling to hear. You said it perfect. I have to lean in a little bit more. By the way, leaning in doesn't help. Leaning in is just your way of you're trying to get closer and read lips, and maybe I can get more access to sound. So that is what hearing loss looks like. So if you're experiencing these symptoms, please, I have to encourage you to do something about it. And I love that you talked about the videos and the books and everything we offer, because all that stuff is basically free, because we're looking to just educate more people about this. Worldwide, there's 1.5 billion people who are suffering with hearing loss and tinnitus. And then it's not just about missing what others are saying. It's not just about, sort of impacting your quality of life. While all that's important, you hit the nail on the head about the connections of hearing loss and your brain, about the connections of tinnitus and your potential risk for cognitive decline and dementia in the future. And so if you don't mind, I would like to dive a little bit more on that, because what is it like being told that, right? I love what you said, which is, wow, there's a problem. I could do nothing about this. It is my choice. I mean, that every patient has a choice, but if I don't, I'm potentially at risk for falls. I'm potentially at risk for cognitive decline. I'm potentially at risk for more tinnitus. So what was that like, having that news sort of given to you?
Yeah, definitely shocking. And then when being told it's a genetic issue, I'm very close to my mum's side of my family, not so much with my father's side. So I tried to do some digging around, and I couldn't really find out if there was kind of some family history on my father's side. There certainly isn't on my mother's side. So I was kind of like doing some research, and like, even though that doesn't really help me, it's just something that I was trying to kind of like do some investigative work just to find out if anyone else in the family that I can speak to has perhaps gone through this, or maybe is experiencing something that I'm experiencing that I can maybe share some knowledge about. But it was just a bit of a shock in the moment. And I think the most difficult early conversations were with my loved ones. It was just kind of coming back from that appointment, speaking to my wife, breaking the news to her, telling my mum, telling my in-laws, and telling my immediate close friends. But once I kind of got those conversations out, and I kind of started to feel the love and support from my kind of core group here locally where I live, and then taking the next step of kind of sharing it with anyone that follows me on social media, and then seeing all the DMs come in and the comments. And it really was, and obviously not everyone has hundreds and thousands of followers, and not everyone's going to experience kind of what I specifically went through by putting that out there in public. But for me personally, it was very heartwarming. It was very uplifting, and really helped me almost have the courage and the confidence to tackle this and to go through it. So I think perhaps the feeling of despair and fear and concern was fairly short-lived for me personally. But that's why I want to try and, moving forward, speak about this more often, because there are people out there that perhaps maybe don't have a support system, and perhaps don't have the ability to get encouragement to tackle their hearing loss, and perhaps someone like myself and others in my position can share some knowledge and share their experience and help others in some way, shape, or form.
Well, I've heard this from patients. It was in my first book, Stop Living in Isolation, when I sort of sat down one day and I was like, I had to recount 20 years of conversations with patients, and I sort of put together a little top 5 list of why people tend to ignore their hearing loss. And I think you just hit the nail on the head there with one of them, which is the fear factor, right? Like, it's one of those appointments that you're going into, and let's be honest, you kind of know the answer already, right? If you show up to an audiologist's office and say, I can't hear, I've got this ringing, you already know there's a problem. And frankly, I think, as a society, we tend to kind of take our problems and put them under the rug. But this is one of those that you learned very quickly that this is a problem that can't be ignored. And too many people are ignoring it. And I appreciate your bringing awareness and advocacy for this, because with 1.5 billion people, we all know somebody. Dare I say, we all know multiple people. And so you're not alone. Even though it may seem like the silent disorder, you, the person suffering with it, might feel alone and isolated. It's actually a very common, in fact, globally, when you look at all diseases and all disorders, hearing loss is the number one most common chronic medical condition. So we've got to address this. We can't keep ignoring it. And so thank you, for your advocacy on this topic. And now I want to dive a little bit. So you went through those stages of probably a little bit of denial, acceptance, talking to friends about it, and finally saying, okay, yes, I have to do something about this. What was it that tipped you into I've got to do something and I have to do it now? And what has it been like? Because I think you've been undergoing treatment now for a few months.
Yeah, absolutely. So going to the exam with Sharina at the audiologist office, I'm sure you yourself have seen the movie Sound of Metal, and that was the movie that I'm a big film fan. And Riz Ahmed, who I think he got an Oscar nomination for that performance, actually is from around the same area I'm from in the UK. And so as this kind of exam was playing, that movie was kind of playing in my head. And so I think it was just talking to Sharina, and also starting to understand, because I think, let's just compare it to maybe any eyesight issues or problems with seeing, and you think, okay, glasses, you think contacts, and then you think laser eye surgery. That's kind of like, and my wife has gone through all three of those things, right? So for me, thinking about hearing loss, I'm thinking about hearing aids, and I just have this mental image of the last time I saw someone wear hearing aids, or what I kind of grew up with, these big gray mechanical pieces. The beige bananas, sitting, on the side of your head. And just from I don't know, a confidence issue or a vanity issue, the idea of wearing something like that was a little something that I was kind of had to kind of almost overcome, but it was overcome very, very quickly, because when you start to see the technology available right now in 2024, it's unbelievable. And I'm a big tech guy in general, like just in every part of my life. If there's a piece of tech that can help me, whether it be with my work or, with my personal health or anything, I'm all for it. And so Sharina kind of just showed me all the available devices. And initially, I kind of went for a device that was completely invisible, sitting right in the ear canal. Because I kind of explained, hey, listen, if there is something out there available where I don't have to wear anything that's kind of, visible, that would be great. Because initially, I'm still at the point of, yes, I want to tackle this, but I want to figure out if there's a solution where, no one's going to know I'm wearing hearing aids. It's something that I thought would be something that I thought would kind of help me initially, and I kind of went through that process. And I won't name the company, but it was a single mic hearing aid situation, and I wore those for a couple of months, kind of going back and forth to Sharina's office, giving my feedback. And it was a 50-50 experience. There were times where it was really helpful, and then there were times where it wasn't as helpful. And actually, just as recently as a couple of weeks ago, we upgraded, and I actually do have rearing canal hearing aids now. And those are hearing aids that are visible. And they sit on top of my earlobes, but they are so small. But I think what I'm trying to get at here is I kind of went through this kind of mental, psychological process of going from an invisible device to a visible device. And I've gone through this process over the last 3 months where I don't care anymore because I'm having such a great hearing experience with the second pair of hearing aids that I'm using at the moment, because they're dual mic and they're able to help with my listening situation much better than the single mic option, and it's just making me happier every single day. And maybe others need to go through that process. And obviously, speaking to Shireen and having a back and forth with her, she told me that 70% of people out there, actually, this is kind of what they end up going for and what they use. But for me, it was, again, a psychological thing. Oh, I am on camera, and I want to be, I guess, comfortable in my own skin when I'm out in public, and I don't want anyone to know that I'm wearing hearing aids. And then now I've got to the point where I don't care because I'm having a great hearing experience because of these devices.
And that's, I love that story, because anybody who's listening, that's the reality. That just goes to show how difficult it is to be able to just take in, wow, okay, I've just been diagnosed with this chronic neurologic condition. It's not going away. It's going to impact my social, emotional, physical, cognitive well-being. But then, and look, you're not alone. And I think I'd like to say it's your age, being 40 and maybe a little bit more vain. But I have this discussion every day with 84-year-olds who are like, I can't let anybody see anything. Ultimately, it boils down to prescriptive technology is not all the same. And this prescriptive technology, it does depend on your hearing loss. It does depend on your needs. And I can almost imagine what Dr. Samuel was going through, because in order to get you on board, it probably took a little, all right, well, we'll try this. And my guess is she knew the whole time eventually it was going to switch over, because yes, you will hear better with dual mics, meaning you're going to hear better in background noise. You're not going to have to think about it anymore. And I think your words, the hearing experience, is ultimately all that matters. Because look, vanity wise, once you start being the butt of jokes about not being able to hear, once you start isolating yourself from others because you can't hear, once people recognize that you're kind of not an active participant in the conversation, that's actually when people start talking about you a lot more behind your back, not just because you have a tiny piece of mega technology that helps you hear your best and keeps your brain stimulated and active.
Yeah. And to be fair, even just kind of sharing, my experience with my, close friends and family. Initially, when I wore the invisible hearing aids, they had no idea I was wearing them. But we would be in situations and I'd have to take them out because they weren't helpful. And now I'm wearing these newer hearing aids that are very visible, like I said, and I'm in situations, and again, maybe I'm just lucky with the friends and family and support system I've got. They're like, yeah, they look pretty cool. And I think also we live in a time where hearing technology in general, buds and AirPods are so commonplace now that it's just become so part of the norm of people seeing others wear something on their ear, in their ear. And actually,
I guarantee you, if they haven't said it to your face, there are people like, hey, what's that? Sandhu's got some cool new technology. He must be, they must have asked him to do a super secret trial for this new company, right?
Yeah. But on that point, it's just honestly for me just very exciting. I love seeing where technology can keep evolving and iterating and going to. And I just think to myself, well, if this amazing technology is available now in 2024, what's it going to look like in a year from now, in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, as I continue to deal with this for the rest of my life? Because that's the biggest thing about this. This isn't a temporary fix. I'm not going to be good again in a year from now. I'll be dealing with this for the rest of my life. So now I'm actively looking for content and new releases and product info. And this kind of goes back to your other point that you made earlier on. It's just we're so lucky to be living in a time with the internet and social media, and you have subject matter experts like yourself and others that are covering this particular industry. And so for someone that is just looking for information, Google is your friend, YouTube is your friend, and you can find out information, you can hear stories, you can look up and read about technology available, and just it helps better inform yourself outside of the experience you are having with your hearing care professional.
Sandhu, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know a lot of times you're ringside or you've got your own podcast going. Don't worry, we're going to have links. So in case there is somebody out there who hasn't heard of you, they can now sort of follow you also. But thank you for your time. Thank you for just being honest and being real about the struggles you've been through and the great outcomes that you've been experiencing. And if you'll do me a favor, because we do know this, we do know that concussions, we do know that traumatic brain injury, we do know that blows to the head all increase the risk of hearing loss, tinnitus, and cognitive decline. So please keep up the amazing work and keep spreading that word.
Listen, likewise, if it wasn't for people like yourself that have dedicated their entire lives to putting in the work and the research, to getting the data out there so that people like myself can be better informed and take action quicker, I wouldn't be in a situation that I'm in right now. So very much appreciate everything that you've done in the industry as well.
Sandhu, thank you so much. God bless. Take care.
Take care, Keith.